It's Final Friday.
I asked you for someone you don't know but want to be your friend, and you said Billy Corben, who's on Twitter and Instagram at Billy Corben, and Corben is spelled Corben. So Billy is a documentary filmmaker. He's done several episodes of 30 for 30, and he's done a Netflix series called Cocaine Cowboys. He's also the director of Screwball, which sounds fascinating to me. It's a documentary about the MLB doping scandal. So talk about what do you like about Billy and his work, and why do you want to be friends with him?
Sure. Well, he actually is a friend of a friend, so
you have a chance.
Yeah, this is going to happen. Billy, if you're listening, dude, we got to hang out. But I first discovered him through a friend of mine, so I started following him and then realized that he was, in addition to being pretty entertaining on Twitter, a really good documentarian. And the first one that I watched of his, you mentioned 30 for 30, was The U. And that was like, I think the first 2-part 30 for 30 that was like 4 hours on the University of Miami's football team. And it was just incredibly entertaining and remarkably interesting, whether you don't actually have to be a football fan. Actually, for good documentaries, you really don't have to be interested in the topic at all, I find,
right,
if the people do a good job. So I got into him first because of that. And then he's also done a series called Cocaine Cowboys, where he has covered the drug war. He covered somebody that's known as the godmother of the drug cartels. And his most recent one covered these two guys who were put on trial in Miami, and they were like moderate sized but highly popular drug dealers. And their case was just totally absurd. And every twist and every turn in their case was unthinkable. So it was a multi-part series that's out now, and it's called Cocaine Cowboys, The Kings of Miami. Mm-hmm. And every episode, you sort of think, like, how can we do multiple episodes on just these two relatively minor figures in the drug war, especially since there's been 1,000 documentaries on the drug war.
Right.
And every episode at the end, it ends with a twist where you just can't believe it, and you can't wait to see the craziness that happens next. And the reason I really like following Billy, though, on Twitter, as much as I love his documentaries, and they're all really good. You mentioned Screwball, which is a great, fun, and somewhat strange documentary about steroids in baseball, because he uses a lot of puppets to do the talking.
Oh my gosh.
Sort of as a satire of the fact that not too many people would go on record.
Right.
But many of these things have something to do with either Miami or Florida. And I think it's a given at this point that as weird as the internet is and weird as the news cycle is, the most weird always is Florida. And he basically uses his Twitter stream to share incredibly bizarre videos or happenings from Florida or cases of corruption. And all of them sort of serve as metaphors for our broader nuttiness. So even if you don't care about Florida, you can recognize the Americanisms in all of it. And then each one ends with a hashtag, because Miami or because Florida. And I just find it incredibly enjoyable and incredibly consistent. And I love simple things. And that part of his online brand is just so simple and so effective. And it's a never ending stream of unbelievable content. So yeah, I highly recommend following him for that alone.
Yeah, and in his Twitter bio, he describes himself as Florida Man. Do you want to explain the Florida Man meme? This is certainly something for any other voracious news readers that probably come across this before.
Yeah, there's just so many strange stories out of Florida that there has become this sort of Florida Man meme where the weirdest thing is always a headline that starts with Florida Man does something or Florida woman does something. And so he's taken on that moniker for himself, even though he's pretty far from Florida Man. But yeah, his most recent one that he shared was a guy that people may have seen. It went a bit viral on the internet, of a white guy who he was probably inebriated, but he was asked to put on a mask at Miami's airport.
Oh, this guy, yeah.
And he went completely nuts, and somebody filmed him like swinging turnstiles and threatening and pushing people at the airport. It probably went on for about 15 minutes, or not 15 minutes, that's an exaggeration, but it seemed like it. It went on for about 3 or 4 minutes for sure.
Yeah.
And people that were filming it were saying, like, where are the police? What's happening? And so in a way, it was, yes, another Florida man story that was an opportunity for Billy Corbin to say, because Miami. But there was this broader message that was so obvious that after the year of Black Lives Matter, to see a white guy going crazy in the airport and pushing people, pushing security, going nuts, and then eventually he was taken for some mental health counseling, compared to what would have happened if that was a black passenger, is not lost on anybody. And then Billy follows up and sees that even though it said the stories said he was arrested, he actually looked into the files, or not the files, but the records for the Miami Police Department, and there was no evidence that he had been arrested. So it sort of had all the pieces, the crazy Florida man, the cultural connection to all of America, and the just wanton corruption that Miami and Florida are so famous for, but that is seeping into the rest of America also.
Yeah, I think I first saw that video from all the various Middle Eastern and Indian people who I follow and South Asian people who I follow on Twitter, because a lot of them were saying just being brown in America, post 9/11 for the past 20 years, the idea of stepping anywhere remotely close to this far out of line is just unfathomable, that you could quote unquote get away with that. I mean, hopefully he is getting help. Hopefully, he's getting whatever sort of help he needs, but it's just like completely two different worlds of just how you get treated.
Yeah, for sure.
So you mentioned that Billy's a friend of a friend, so there is a chance you two will get together at some point. So if you were friends, let's set up the first date here. What do you want to do with him, or what do you want to talk about with him?
Well, I'm sure if we did talk at first, he would say, "Hey, can you promote my documentary in your newsletter?" Yeah. And I would say, "Hey, can you tweet about my book to your following?" So I find that in old school internet types, that's the first thing. But I really would love to learn more about the documentary process. I've been investing in internet companies for about 30 years, but in the last year, I've started to also dabble in some documentaries. And that's probably my favorite art form, I would say. I love documentaries. I love TV in general, but I really do love documentaries. So I just love to ask him about that, how it works, how he comes up with ideas, how he sets it up, how somebody can get involved with it. And I'd also just love to get any stories about the drug war, because it's, even though I cover all news, I would say at the intersection of the America's war on drugs and the opiate crisis is sort of the sweet spot of my area of interest, because I feel especially the opioid crisis is sort of the everything America story. So I'd probably want to talk to him about that stuff and learn more about it.
That was Billy Corbin, who's on Twitter and Instagram at Billy Corbin.